The containment bay smelled like ozone and fear. David Wong pushed his cleaning cart through the heavy doors, feeling the vibration of the security systems through the floor. He had worked on Station Helios 7 for 3 months now, cleaning corridors and maintaining equipment that nobody else wanted to touch. Today marked his first visit to Bay 12. The creature inside could melt steel with its breath. David set down his equipment and looked up. The dragon filled most of the massive chamber, its body covered in scales that caught light like fractured diamonds. Crystalline wings folded against its sides glowed with stored energy. The scientists called it a star wing. The military called it a threat. David just saw something alive and alone. He had read the reports during his lunch break. 47 researchers dead across 3 years. Every species in the Galactic Council had tried to communicate with it. The Altarians used their best translation matrices. The Kelvin Collective attempted neural linking. The Avians tried pattern recognition algorithms. Nothing worked. Each attempt ended in violence. The Starwing turned its enormous head toward David, eyes like molten gold fixed on him. Most people would have run. David simply nodded once and began his work. He couldn't hear the warning alarms that other workers complained about. Being deaf since birth meant the constant blaring sirens that drove others crazy never bothered him. He just watched the flashing lights and kept working. David noticed something strange after 20 minutes. The creature wasn't moving randomly. Its front claws traced deliberate patterns against the containment field. Slow movements, repeated sequences, the same gestures over and over. He stopped mopping and watched. The Starwing drew 3 lines in the air, curved one claw, spread its talons wide, then repeated the sequence. David counted 15 repetitions before he realized what he was seeing. It looked like sign language. His heart hammered in his chest. Every species had tried audio translation devices, telepathic probes, chemical analysis of pheromones. Nobody had considered visual communication because nobody was looking at the creature's movements. They were too busy running scanners and hiding behind blast shields. David moved closer to the containment field. The Starwing went completely still. He raised his hand slowly and signed the word for hello in standard Earth sign language. The movements were clear and deliberate. The dragon's eyes widened. David signed again. Hello, the universal greeting that humans had used for centuries when words failed. The Starwing shifted its massive body. One claw came up. The movement was clumsy and oversized, but David recognized it immediately. The creature was trying to copy his gesture, trying to sign back. His hand shook as he signed another word, friend. The dragon tilted its head. Its claw moved again, this time forming a shape that looked almost like the sign for help. Not quite right, but close enough that David understood the intent. He spent the next hour teaching basic signs. Yes, no, water, food, safe, danger. The Starwing learned faster than any student David had ever taught. By the end of his shift, they had established 30 different signs. David knew he should report this immediately. Commander Yuki Tanaka needed to know. Dr. Ren needed to know. The entire Galactic Council needed to know they had been wrong about the Starwings. But he also knew what would happen. They would take over, bring in their experts, push him aside, maybe hurt the creature with more invasive tests. David had spent his whole life being pushed aside by people who assumed deaf meant stupid. He wasn't going to let that happen to someone else. He came back that night after his shift ended. The corridors were empty. Most staff avoided Bay 12 unless their jobs required it. David entered quietly and sat down outside the containment field. The Starwing was waiting. It pressed close to the energy barrier, as near to David as the field allowed. He could feel heat radiating from its body even through the barrier. David signed slowly. My name is David. The creature's claw moved in response. The signs were rough but readable. Skyfear. A name. The dragon had a name. David felt tears prick his eyes. 3 years this being had been imprisoned. 3 years of trying to communicate while everyone assumed it was just an animal. A dangerous, beautiful animal that nobody bothered to understand. "Why did you attack the colonies?" David signed. Skyfire's movements became agitated. Multiple signs flowed together. Warning, danger coming, tried to save them, they ran, they attacked us, we defended. David's blood went cold. What danger? The dragon's next signs were complicated. It took several attempts before David understood. Something was coming through dimensional space. Something hungry. The Starwings had been trying to evacuate populations from planets in the danger zone. The other species had interpreted rescue attempts as attacks. "How many of your kind are there?" David asked. "Few now, many died trying to help. Your people shot us down." Guilt twisted in David's stomach. The Galactic Council had been fighting the wrong enemy. "I will tell them. I will make them understand." Skyfare signed back. Will they listen? They never listen. David thought about every time someone had dismissed him. Every job interview where they assumed he couldn't do the work. Every conversation where people talked over him to his interpreter instead of to him directly. He understood what it felt like to be invisible. "They will listen," he signed with determination he didn't quite feel, "or I will make them." The dragon's eyes seemed to soften. It signed something that looked like hope mixed with doubt. David stayed there until dawn, learning Skyfare's language and teaching his own. They had only scratched the surface. There was so much more to say, so much more to understand. When he finally left, David had made a decision. He would go to Commander Tanaka first thing in the morning. He would show them all what he had discovered, and if they didn't believe him, he would find a way to prove it. The galaxy's most dangerous creature wasn't dangerous at all. It was just trying to be heard. And David Wong, a deaf maintenance worker that most people barely noticed, was the first person to finally listen. Commander Yuki Tanaka stared at David like he had grown a second head. Her office overlooked the main hangar bay, and through the window, dozens of ships came and went. Each one carried weapons designed to fight Starwings if necessary. "You want me to believe that the most dangerous predator in the galaxy has been trying to talk to us," she said. David nodded. His interpreter, Lisa, stood beside him translating between sign language and speech. He signed carefully. "Not trying, actually talking. I spent 6 hours with Skyfer last night. We had a conversation." Dr. Wren, the Altarian xenobiologist, made a clicking sound that Lisa translated as dismissive laughter. His 4 arms crossed over his chest. "Impossible. We have tested every known form of communication. The creature shows no signs of higher intelligence." "Because you were testing the wrong things," David signed. "You looked for sound, brain waves, chemical signals. You never looked at what the Starwings were actually doing with their bodies." Tanaka leaned back in her chair. "Explain." David pulled out his tablet and showed them the video he had recorded. Skyfare's movements were clearly visible. The repeated gestures. The way the dragon responded to David's signs with its own. The progression from simple concepts to complex ideas over just a few hours. "This could be trained responses," Dr. Wren argued. "Animals can be taught to mimic behaviors." "Then test it," David signed. "Let me ask Skyfare questions that require reasoning. Math problems, historical facts, moral philosophy. If it is just an animal, it will fail." Tanaka studied the video again. Her expression was unreadable. Finally, she said, "One test, under full monitoring. If the Starwing shows genuine comprehension, we will reassess. If not, you go back to maintenance and never enter Bay 12 again." David agreed immediately. 2 hours later, Bay 12 was filled with cameras and sensors. Tanaka stood behind the blast shield with Dr. Wren and half the station's science team. David entered the containment area alone. Skyfare was packing. The dragon's distress was obvious in the way its tail lashed and smoke leaked from its nostrils. David signed quickly. "They are testing us. We need to prove you are intelligent. Can you answer questions?" The dragon signed back. "What questions?" "Mathematics first. What is 732 times 49? Skyfare's claw moved, drawing numbers in the air. 35,868. The correct answer appeared in seconds. Through the observation window, David saw Dr. Wren consulting his computer. The Altarian looked shaken. David continued, "Tell me about the Treaty of Andros, the one that formed the Galactic Council." Skyfare signs flowed together describing events from 300 years ago, details about which species joined first, which ones resisted, the compromises that were made, information that was historically accurate but not common knowledge. "How do you know this?" David asked. "We were there," Skyfare signed. "We watched, we tried to join, they shot at us, called us monsters, we left." The implications made David's head spin. The Starwings had been trying to make contact for centuries. Every attempt had been met with violence because nobody understood their communication method. "One more question," David signed. "This one is about morality. If you could save your own child or 5 strangers, which would you choose?" Skyfear went very still. The dragon's eyes met David's. "That is not a fair question. Love makes us choose family. Morality demands we save more lives. Both answers are correct. Both answers are wrong. That is why choice is hard." In the observation room, Tanaka ordered the test stopped. She entered the containment area herself, walking past David to stand before the energy barrier. Skyfare watched her carefully. "Can it understand me if I speak?" Tanaka asked. David signed to Skyfare, who responded. "It says yes, but speaking to it is like you trying to understand a foreign language without translation. Reading signs is clearer." Tanaka took a deep breath. "On behalf of the Galactic Council and humanity, I apologize. We should have looked harder. We should have been more patient." Skyfare's response was simple. "Help us now. Danger is coming." "What danger?" Tanaka asked. David translated as Skyfare explained about the dimensional breach, about the hollow swarm that existed partially outside normal space, about how Starwings could see the rifts opening and had been trying to warn everyone by evacuating the threatened colonies. "Why did you fight back when we tried to stop you?" Tanaka questioned. "Would you not defend yourself if someone attacked while you tried to save their children?" Skyfare signed. The logic was unassailable. The Starwings had been heroes, and the galaxy had treated them like villains. Dr. Wren entered the bay. He approached the containment field slowly. "I was wrong," he said aloud, knowing David would translate. "I let my assumptions blind me to the truth. What can we do to make this right?" Skyfare's answer was immediate. "Release me. Contact my flock. The breach opens in 26 days. We need to seal it before the swarm comes through in force." Tanaka looked at David. "Can we trust this?" David signed to Skyfare. "If we release you, will you help us? Will you work with us as partners?" The dragon's response made David smile. "We have been trying to partner with you for 300 years. You finally learned to listen. Yes, we will help. We will teach you to see what we see. Together we can stop the swarm." "Release the containment field," Tanaka ordered. The energy barrier dissolved. For the first time in 3 years, Skyfare was free. The dragon could have attacked, could have escaped. Instead, it lowered its massive head to David's level and gently touched its snout to his hand. "Thank you for hearing me," Skyfare signed with its free claw. David felt tears on his face. "Thank you for not giving up on us." Within hours, the message went out across the Galactic Council network. The Starwings were not enemies. They were allies, and humanity's deaf community had just become the most valuable translators in the galaxy. But time was running short. The dimensional breach was growing, and somewhere beyond the walls of reality, the hollow swarm was waiting to feed. The emergency council chamber held representatives from 2,000 species. David stood on a platform with Sci-Fi beside him, her massive form barely fitting in the designated space. Holographic projections showed his hands as he signed, magnified so everyone could see. Ambassador Preet Singh introduced them. Members of the council, we have made a terrible mistake. The being we called Prisoner 7743 is named Sci-Fi. She is not an animal, she is a person, and she has a warning we need to hear. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some species looked curious, others appeared angry. A Kelvin representative spoke through its translation device. This is a trick. Starwings killed thousands of our people. Sci-Fi's signs were sharp and precise. David translated. Your people refused to evacuate when we warned them. They attacked our rescue ships. We defended ourselves only after your weapons killed 3 of our young. The Kelvin representative fell silent. David continued translating as Sci-Fi described the dimensional breach, the location in the outer rim near the Kepler expanse, the way reality was tearing open like rotted fabric, the creatures pushing through from the other side. The hollow swarm exists in multiple dimensions at once, David signed for Sci-Fi. Your sensors cannot fully detect them. Your weapons pass through them like they are not really there. Only we can fight them because our fire burns in dimensional space too. An avian council member spoke up. If this is true, show us proof. Tanaka stepped forward. We sent a probe to the coordinates Sci-Fi provided. This is what we found. The main screen activated. The footage showed empty space at first. Then the probe's dimensional sensors engaged. Reality twisted. Colors that should not exist bled through the fabric of space. Through the tiers, shapes moved. Massive, writhing, wrong. The probe moved closer. A tentacle of living darkness shot out and grabbed it. The last image showed thousands of creatures beyond the rift, all pressing toward the opening. Then static. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Species that had been enemies for generations suddenly had a common threat. Arguments broke out about defense strategies, evacuation protocols, whether to fight or flee. Sci-Fi slammed her tail against the floor. The boom silenced everyone. Her signs were slow and deliberate. Fighting is not enough. We must seal the breach, but we cannot do it alone. We need your technology. We need your ships. We need you to trust us. Colonel Bradley Ross stood. The human military officer had been skeptical until now. What do you need from us? Amplifiers, Sci-Fi signed. Our fire can seal dimensional rifts, but one breach this large requires many of us burning together. Your species understands energy-focusing technology. Build us devices that can combine our flames into a single point. An Altarian engineer called out. That would require unprecedented cooperation. We would need to study your biology, understand how your fire works. Then study, Sci-Fi agreed. We will teach you everything, but we must start now. 25 days until the swarm comes through in force. Ambassador Singh looked at David. Can you organize a translation team? We will need multiple people who can communicate with the Starwings. David nodded and signed his response. I know 12 other deaf humans on nearby stations. We can establish a working group within 2 days. The council voted. Not everyone agreed, but the majority decided to work with the Starwings. 43 worlds in the outer rim would be evacuated. Every available ship would join the defense fleet, and humanity would lead the translation effort. Over the next week, David barely slept. He worked with other deaf interpreters to standardize the Starwing sign language. Each dragon had slight variations, like regional dialects. Creating a unified translation system was exhausting but essential. Hannah Ose arrived from Station Europa. She was a deaf engineer with expertise in energy systems. David had worked with her before and trusted her completely. They fell into an easy partnership, designing amplifier arrays while SciFi and three other Starwings provided biological data. The problem is synchronization, Hannah signed to David during a late-night work session. We need 47 Starwings firing at exactly the same moment. 1 second of delay and the breach will not seal properly. David looked at SciFi, who was resting in the corner of the lab. Can your people coordinate that precisely? If we have a conductor, SciFi signed back. Someone who can see all of us and direct the timing, but no Starwing can do that while also channeling fire. Hannah's eyes widened. You need someone at the center, someone who can signal all 47 dragons simultaneously. Yes, SciFi confirmed, but they would be exposed to dimensional radiation. It would kill them within hours. David felt cold. He understood what was being asked, what would be required, but he said nothing, not yet. The evacuation proceeded faster than expected. Refugee ships poured into safe zones, families torn from their homes but alive. The outer rim slowly emptied as the deadline approached. Then the first scout creatures emerged early. A mining outpost called Hellion Station sent a distress call. By the time rescue ships arrived, 3,000 workers were gone. The building stood empty. No bodies, no blood, just silence. David watched the footage with SciFi. They took them, killed them. Consumed them, SciFi signed grimly. The swarm feeds on biological matter, everything, even the bacteria in the air. They leave nothing behind but empty structures. Hannah came running into the command center. Her hands moved frantically. More breaches opening, 7 new locations. The swarm is not waiting. They are coming now. Tanaka grabbed her communicator. All ships to battle stations. Evacuate the remaining civilian populations immediately. This is not a drill. David looked at SciFi. Are your people ready? They are gathering, the dragon signed. 47 of us. We will fly to the breach and do what we have always done. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. Even after how we treated you, David asked. SciFi's eyes met his. Especially because of how you treated us. Someone must show your species what real strength looks like. It is not fire or claws. It is choosing to help even when help was denied to you. The words hit David hard. He thought about every time someone had dismissed him because he was deaf, every opportunity denied, every conversation he was excluded from. He could have become bitter, angry. Instead, he had kept trying to connect. Maybe that was the real lesson. Understanding was not about being heard. It was about choosing to listen, even when listening was hard. The defense grid stretched across 3 star systems. David coordinated from the command ship Unity, a massive carrier that served as mobile headquarters. Screens surrounded him showing ship positions, Starwing locations, and the growing breach that pulsed like an infected wound in space. SciFi flew alongside the Unity, close enough that David could see her through the viewport. 2 other Starwings flanked her, their crystalline scales catching light from distant stars. 44 more were spread across the fleet in mixed formations. Hannah worked at a nearby console, her fingers flying across controls. She had designed communication relays that let David's signs reach every Starwing simultaneously. Cameras on his suit broadcast his movements. Screens on every ship displayed his translations. The entire fleet moved according to the conversations between 1 deaf man and 47 dragons. Scout reports coming in, Lisa signed from her station. She was translating communications between David and the bridge crew. Hellion 4 still has 2 million colonists waiting for transport. Evacuation is behind schedule. David signed to SciFi. Can you reach Hellion 4 before the swarm does? The dragon's response was grim. If we leave the defense line, other worlds will be exposed. We must choose. Colonel Ross appeared on the main screen. His fleet guarded the breach directly. Wung, we have movement. The rift is expanding. I count. He paused, his face going pale. Thousands of contacts, they are coming through. The hollow swarm poured into normal space like oil spreading across water. Each creature was roughly the size of a small ship, their forms constantly shifting. They looked like holes in reality shaped vaguely like living things. Tentacles, teeth, eyes that opened and closed in impossible places. "All ships engage," Ross ordered. "Starwings, you are cleared to fire." The battle began. Council ships unleashed everything they had: plasma cannons, kinetic rounds, energy beams. The weapons passed through the swarm creatures or were absorbed harmlessly. Only when the Starwings breathed their dimensional fire did the enemies burn and dissolve. But there were too many. For every swarm creature destroyed, 3 more emerged from the breach. "Hellion 4 distress call," Lisa signed urgently. "The swarm has entered their system. They have maybe 1 hour before planet fall." David made a decision he had no authority to make. He signed to Skyfair and 2 other dragons. "Take your group and go. Save as many as you can. We will hold here." Skyfair hesitated. "If we leave, you lose 30% of your firepower." "If we do not go, 2 million people die," David signed back. "Go, that is what you do, you save people." The 3 Starwings broke formation and accelerated toward Hellion 4. David watched them go and prayed he had made the right choice. The battle intensified. Ross's ships deployed the anchor mines Hannah had designed. The devices created small pockets of dimensional instability that trapped swarm creatures long enough for the remaining Starwings to burn them. It was working, but barely. A Kelvin destroyer took a direct hit. The swarm tore through its shields and hull like paper. David watched in horror as the crew evacuated in escape pods. Then he saw the swarm entities converging on those pods, hunting the survivors. "No," he signed desperately, though no one was watching. "Not like this." A Starwing named Brightwing saw it too. The dragon dove past 3 council ships and positioned itself between the escape pods and the swarm. Fire erupted from Brightwing's mouth in a continuous stream, creating a wall of dimensional flame. The swarm crashed against it and burned. The escape pods reached safety. Brightwing turned to rejoin the battle. That was when a massive swarm entity emerged directly behind the dragon. The creature was 3 times larger than the others. Its tentacles wrapped around Brightwing before the dragon could react. David screamed, though no sound came out. He signed frantically to the other Starwings. "Help! Brightwing is down." 2 dragons broke formation and charged toward their comrade. Their combined fire forced the large swarm creature to release Brightwing, but the damage was done. The dragon's left wing was gone, dissolved by the swarm's touch. Brightwing fell, crashing into a nearby asteroid. Ross diverted a rescue ship immediately. David watched the screens, his heart pounding. Medical teams reached Brightwing within minutes. The dragon was alive but critically injured. "We cannot sustain this," Ross said over the command channel. "We have lost 8 ships, the Starwings are exhausted, and the swarm keeps coming." David looked at the tactical display. The breach was growing. Soon it would be too large to seal even with all 47 Starwings working together. They needed to act now. A message came through from Hellion 4. Skyfair and her group had created a plasma barrier around the evacuation site. The remaining colonists were boarding transports under the Starwings' protection. They had bought enough time. But the cost kept mounting. Another council ship destroyed. More swarm entities breaking through the defensive perimeter. The fleet was being pushed back. Hannah signed to David. "The amplifiers are ready. All 47 units tested and deployed. But we still need a coordinator at the center point. Someone has to direct the Starwings in real time." David knew what that meant. He had known since the moment Hannah first explained the problem. The coordinator would need to be at the breach's edge, exposed to dimensional radiation that would kill a human in hours. But without perfect coordination, the seal would fail. He looked at Skyfer through the viewport. The dragon had returned from Hellion 4, exhausted but triumphant. 2 million people were safe because of her. "I will do it," David signed to Hannah. Her face went white. "No, there has to be another way." "There is not," David signed simply. "You said it yourself. We need someone who can see all 47 star wings and coordinate them perfectly. Someone they trust, someone who speaks their language." "It will kill you," Hannah signed, tears streaming down her face. "Maybe," David agreed. "But if I do nothing, billions die. That is not a hard choice." He turned to the communications array and signed to all 47 star wings at once. "Gather at the breach. Prepare for the sealing. I will coordinate from the center position." Skyfer's response was immediate. "No, you will die. We will find another way." "There is no other way," David signed. "And we are out of time. This is my choice. Let me make it." The dragon's rage and sorrow came through in every movement, but she did not argue further. The Starwings began moving into position around the breach. David prepared to board the small coordination pod that would take him to certain death. The coordination pod was barely large enough for David and his equipment. Transparent walls gave him a view in all directions. Cameras mounted around him would broadcast his signs to every Starwing. Life support systems hummed quietly, though David could only feel their vibrations through the floor. Hannah had helped him into the protective suit herself. Her hands shook as she sealed the helmet. "The radiation shielding will give you maybe 3 hours," she signed against the helmet's faceplate. "After that, your cells start breaking down. Please come back to me." David pressed his hand against hers through the barrier. "I will try." Commander Tanaka tried one last time to stop him. "The Council refuses to authorize this. You are too valuable as a translator. There must be another option." "There is not," David signed firmly. "And I do not need authorization. I am doing this." He climbed into the pod before anyone could physically restrain him. The hatch sealed. Mechanical arms released the pod from Unity and small thrusters pushed him toward the breach. Through the pod's walls, David watched the Starwings take their positions. 47 dragons formed a sphere around the dimensional rift, each one exactly measured distances apart. The amplifier arrays Hannah designed floated between them, ready to focus and combine their fire. Skyfer flew closest to David's pod. The dragon positioned herself directly between him and the breach. If anything went wrong, she would be the first to react. The comm system activated. Lisa's voice came through speakers while text scrolled across David's helmet display. "All ships falling back to safe distance. You are cleared to begin when ready." David took a deep breath. His hands were steady as he raised them and began to sign. "Starwings, this is the pattern. I will count down from 3. On 0, you all fire together. Hold your flame steady while I direct the focus. Trust me, I will not let you down." 47 dragons confirmed they were ready. David saw them through the pod's walls, magnificent and terrifying. Each one capable of destroying a ship. Each one now trusting a human they had met only days ago. 3, David signed. His hands moved in broad, clear gestures that every camera caught and broadcast. The swarm sensed what was coming. Thousands of entities surged toward them from the breach. Ross's fleet engaged immediately, creating a defensive barrier. Ships fired continuously, holding back the tide just long enough. 2, David continued signing. Skyfer's eyes locked on his. The dragon's body began to glow as internal fires built toward release. All 47 Starwings were luminous now, like stars preparing to go supernova. 1. David felt the dimensional radiation already. It pushed against the pod's shielding like invisible pressure. His skin tingled. His vision blurred at the edges. The protection suit's medical system started beeping warnings. 0. 47 dragons released their fire simultaneously. Dimensional flames erupted in streams of impossible colors. The amplifier arrays caught each stream and began directing them according to Hannah's calculations. David's hands moved in constant flowing patterns. Skyfear, angle 5 degrees left. Brightwing, reduce power by 10%. Section 7, increase intensity. His signs directed the fire like a conductor directing an orchestra. The flames wove together, creating a lattice of burning energy around the breach. Where the lattice touched the rift, reality began to heal. The tear in space started closing, collapsing inward as dimensional fire sealed the wound. But the swarm fought back. The largest entities threw themselves at the Starwing formation. Ross's ships intercepted some, but 3 got through. They hit the dragons on the far side of the sphere, trying to disrupt the pattern. "Hold position," David signed desperately. "Do not break formation." The attack Starwings maintained their fire streams even as swarm tentacles wrapped around them. Council ships moved in, firing everything they had to drive the creatures away. The formation held. David's nose began to bleed. The radiation was overwhelming his suit's protection faster than expected. His hands trembled but kept signing. The lattice was 70% complete. They just needed more time. Skyfare saw his distress. She redirected some of her fire, creating a shield between David's pod and the worst radiation. It helped, but not enough. David could feel his body failing. His vision darkened. His hands felt heavy. "Almost there," he signed, though he was not sure if anyone could still see his movements clearly. 90%, keep firing." The breach collapsed further. The swarm's connection to their home dimension was being severed. The entities still in normal space began dissolving without the rift to sustain them. The battle was being won. David's signs became sloppy. His arms would not respond properly. The suit's medical display showed critical warnings across multiple systems. He was dying, and everyone knew it. "Seal complete on my mark," he managed to sign. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, final burn. The Starwings poured everything they had into one last coordinated blast. The dimensional lattice flared impossibly bright. The breach collapsed to a single point, then vanished completely. The rift was sealed. David slumped in the pod. Blood ran from his nose, his ears, his eyes. The radiation had cooked his cells from the inside. The medical systems went from warnings to alarms to a flatline tone he could not hear but saw displayed in red across his fatting vision. Skyfare screamed, a sound that vibrated through dimensional space itself. All 47 Starwings surged toward David's pod. They surrounded it completely, their bodies forming a protective sphere. Then they began to glow again, not with fire this time, but with pure life energy. The same dimensional power that let them burn across realities could also heal dimensional damage. They had never tried it on another species before. They had no idea if it would work. But they tried anyway. 47 dragons poured their life force into the human who had given his life to coordinate them. The energy flowed through the pod's walls, soaking into David's dying body. His cells absorbed the dimensional power, using it to repair radiation damage that should have been irreversible. Hannah watched from Unity, tears streaming down her face. Ross stood silent at his station. The entire fleet held its collective breath. David's heart, which had stopped beating, suddenly started again. His eyes opened. Through the pod's walls, he saw Skyfear pressed close, her eyes fierce with determination. "Live," the dragon signed with one claw while maintaining the healing energy flow. "You heard us. Now we save you." David tried to sign back, but his hands would not move. So he just smiled and let the Starwings work their impossible magic. David woke 6 months later in a hospital on Earth. Sunlight streamed through the window, warm on his face. His body felt different, strange in ways he could not quite define. When he looked at the air itself, he saw faint shimmer patterns like heat waves that nobody else seemed to notice. The dimensional radiation had changed him. The doctors said his cellular structure now existed slightly out of phase with normal reality. He could perceive the edges of other dimensions, just barely. It was like developing a new sense he had no name for. Hannah sat beside his bed reading a book. She looked up when he stirred and her face lit up with joy and relief. "You are awake," she signed. "Finally." "How long?" David signed back. His hands were weak but functional. 6 months, 2 weeks, 3 days, Hannah signed precisely. "We thought you might never wake up. The Starwing healing worked, but your body needed time to adjust." David tried to sit up. Hannah helped him with pillows. The breach. Sealed permanently. Zero swarm activity since that day. "You did it, David. You saved everyone." "We did it," he corrected. "All of us together." Hannah smiled and signed. "Scyther is outside. She has been visiting every day. Would you like to see her?" David nodded eagerly. Hannah spoke to someone outside, and moments later, the massive form of Scyther landed in the hospital's courtyard garden. The dragon was too large to fit inside, but she pressed her face close to the window. "Hello, friend," Scyther signed with one claw. "Hello," David signed back, feeling tears on his face. "Thank you for saving me." "You saved billions. We saved one. It was the easier task," Scyther responded. Over the next hour, Scyther caught David up on everything that had happened. The Galactic Council had formally apologized to the Starwing species and granted them full membership. The Council now required all members to learn basic Starwing sign language. Deaf humans were in high demand throughout the galaxy as translators and diplomats. "The galaxy is learning to see differently," Scyther signed. "You taught us that communication is not about sound or technology. It is about being willing to understand." David learned that he had become famous, though he did not particularly want the attention. The council had given him their highest honor. Statues were being built. Children across 1,000 worlds were learning his story in school. But the part that mattered most to David was simpler. 3 other species had been identified as using visual communication that had been misunderstood. Teams of human linguists were working with them now, establishing contact for the first time. What had been dismissed as animal behavior was actually complex language. "We were never the only ones being ignored," Scyther signed. "Your species found us because you understood what it meant to be unheard. Now you are teaching the galaxy to listen with more than ears." David spent 3 months in recovery. Hannah never left his side. Somewhere between the hospital room conversations and the shared work, their relationship had shifted from friendship into something deeper. When David was finally cleared to leave Earth, Hannah signed a question he had been hoping to hear. "Will you come work with me, building bridges between species, traveling the galaxy?" "Yes," David signed without hesitation, "but only if Scyther comes too." The dragon, watching through the window, signed enthusiastically. "Where else would I go? You are my voice. I am your wings. We are partners now." They formed an organization called the Dimensional Watch. Its mission was to monitor for threats like the swarm and to help establish communication with species that had been overlooked. David coordinated a team of 20 deaf humans and 10 Starwings. Together, they traveled from system to system, solving problems through understanding rather than force. Their first major success came on a remote world where silicon-based entities had been classified as geological formations. David and his team spent 3 months learning that the entities communicated through variations in crystal growth patterns. Once proper contact was established, the beings shared scientific knowledge that revolutionized council technology. David stood in front of a classroom a year after waking from his coma. The students were young aliens from 6 different species, all learning sign language. Scyther's shadow passed across the window as she circled overhead, watching proudly. "Communication is not natural," David signed to his students. "It is a choice. Every time you learn a new language, Every time you try to understand someone different from you, you are choosing connection over isolation. That choice is what makes civilization possible. A small avian student raised a wing. Through her translator, she asked, "But what if we try and they do not understand? What if they think we are strange?" David smiled. "Then you keep trying, you find new ways, you do not give up, because somewhere out there is someone who needs to hear your voice, and you might be the only one who can understand theirs." After class, David walked through the gardens with Hannah. Her hand was warm in his. Skyfear landed nearby, and they sat together in comfortable silence. "Do you ever regret it?" Hannah sighed eventually. "Almost dying, the way your body changed." David looked at the dimensional shimmer only he could see, at the dragon who had become his closest friend, at the woman he loved, at the sky full of stars where dozens of species now talked to each other in ways they never had before. "Never," he sighed. "I spent my whole life being told I was broken because I could not hear, but I was not broken. I was just listening differently, and that different way of listening let me hear someone nobody else could." Skyfare signed in agreement. The universe speaks in infinite languages. The tragedy is not that we are different. It is when we refuse to learn from those differences. David leaned back against Skyfare's warm scales. Hannah rested her head on his shoulder. Above them, ships from 1,000 worlds came and went, each one carrying people who could now talk to each other across impossible distances. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Understanding required more than technology or treaties. It required the humility to admit you might be wrong, the patience to learn new ways of seeing, and the courage to keep trying even when communication seemed impossible. Somewhere in deep space, the Dimensional Watch monitored the boundaries of reality. 47 Starwings flew patrol routes, no longer alone. Deaf humans coordinated with them, translating and guiding. Together, they kept the galaxy safe from threats that most people never knew existed. And in a garden on Earth, a maintenance worker who once cleaned floors now taught the future leaders of galactic civilization the most important skill they would ever learn: how to listen